Hello, everyone. My name is Hassan Nassim, Manager of Solution Consulting here at Diabsolut, and I have with me two special guests. We have Naeem Khalid, who is our Vice President of Customer Success here at Diabsolut, and we also have Kate Alger, who is the Senior Director of Product Strategy for CS Cloud at Certinia. Both guests have ample experience when it comes to talking and knowing about customer success from a practice and an engagement perspective. They also will be talking to us today about, not only practices, but how you can apply it within a professional services organization. So before we get started, Kate, you want to give us a brief background about yourself?
Great, thank you so much. I lead the product strategy for Customer Success Cloud at Certinia. And prior to joining Certinia, I was actually a VP of Customer Success. I've also led consulting in product management at Oracle and SAP. So I'm very happy to join everybody here today, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kate. And Naeem.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everyone. So Naeem Khalid, VP of Customer Success. I played a few different roles over my years. Used to be VP of Professional Services and heading up our delivery cell, being an architect, being a kind of consultant. So I've been working with customers in various guises for over 20 years. Transitioning to kind of managing customer success this year, focusing really on taking the learnings from sales and delivery and being more customer focused and supporting our sales and delivery organizations. I'm excited to be kind of talking about this today as well.
Perfect. Well, welcome both. And for the audience, if you have any questions during the session, please raise them in the Q&A section of Zoom, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end of the session. While we're waiting for Erica to bring up the slides, I wanted to, you will see it momentarily. Basically, can you move on to the next slide? Perfect. Next one. All right, so before we get started, I just want to give you a bit of a background of the where Kate and Naeem are working today. I mean, Naeem and myself are part of Diabsolut, a trusted Salesforce and Certinia partner. We have over 120 employees ranging from sales, professional services, marketing, and customer success. We recently established a department for CES within our professional services organization, and we are early adopters of the Certinia CS Cloud solution, in addition to other Certinia and Salesforce products, including but not limited to Certinia PS Cloud, Salesforce CRM or Sales Cloud, and others. On the other side, from Certinia is an independent software provider or ISV. They are a leader when it comes to providing best practices, tools, and products that supports professional services organizations in general, SaaS companies, and we're covering areas of ERP, PSA, and obviously CS Cloud. They also have an in-house professional services organization that delivers services to clients. The reason why we're meeting today is basically to talk about customer success in general and to see how it applies. So moving on, if we look at the next slide, which covers basically a survey that was handled by TSIA, or Technology and Services Industry Association. This survey covers, or was asked to a number of professional services organizations on what the definition of customer success is. Looking at those results from that survey, we see that the majority of folks are, think of customer success as a retention and renewal department. Others look at it from an expansion metrics, adopting new clients, onboarding customers, and 65% of the respondents mentioned that a CS department is or should be the voice of the customer within the organization. Obviously, there are many definitions for customer success. Customer success is not new. It's been out there in the market since late 90s with the introduction of cloud, was mainly focused on SaaS companies. But there's a recent trend to introduce customer success and professional services organizations. But before we get to that, I guess my question to Kate is, what's the definition of customer success from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Issam. I hear this question quite a bit, and all of the TSIA metrics are actually correct. From my perspective, customer success really can still be defined by asking those two questions that were asked actually by the first customer success department that you mentioned, that was born in the late 90s in 1996. Marie Alexander from a CRM company called Vantiv, which is credited for creating the first dedicated customer success department, asked the customer two simple questions. How are you going to define success? And what do you expect from us? And the customer success business challenges are still the same, looking to protect the existing customer base, really while at the same time looking for value insights to grow the base and help customers get the most value out of their solution. And customers are still looking for proof of value. So it really comes back to that first question of, how are you going to define your success, and understanding what value means to the customer, demonstrating that value to the customer really throughout the journey. One of the other things that really is coming into focus and in more recently is breaking down those departmental silos. So that's become a significant focus for organizations. They want to make sure that data is captured and centralized, and there's one single view of the customer. And the customers, they don't want the customers to feel your organizational structure. And customer success really needs to become a team sport.
Well, I mean, these are all great points, and I guess this confirms that customer success is not just about handling escalations from clients, right? It's not a help desk or a support center to handle these kind of engagements. It's much more than that. I guess let's turn the page now with Naeem. Before we go to the next slide, let's talk from Naeem's perspective. What's it? I mean, you've recently been assigned as the VP of Customer Success here at Diabsolut. What's the definition of customer success to you, and how did you see it from the lens of a professional services organization?
Sure, yeah. I think having kind of spent so long in delivery, one of the kind of biggest challenges we faced was, it's the mental health of the relationship, right? So the biggest part of what I think from customer success is it's building like a pleasant working environment. Like, how do you build a relationship with your customer that is about working in partnership to solve problems and move forward? I don't think anyone here is going to be like, oh, projects don't have problems, relationships don't have issues. That's just a natural part of doing business. A big part of kind of customer success's role is make those relationships strong, that you work in a collaborative manner, you figure out problems and you move forward. Because ultimately, when we look at success, right, it is success of the customer is success of the implementer, right? So this is one of the kind of key things. I think the other part of it is, one of the things we've got to realize is the time and effort to acquire customers is much, much higher than the time and effort it takes to retain customers, right? So once you've spent the time kind of building a client relationship and winning them, it's in everyone's interest to kind of keep spending that time and effort to keep them happy, make sure that we're being kind of proactive in listening to them, versus kind of like, hey, in a transactional relationship, you kind of do a project and you're done. This has, been kind of key to building long-term relationships. And, I'm proud at Diabsolut, we have a lot of customers we measure in the decades as customers. And that's just because we've invested in building long-term relationships with them. Ultimately, the other part of it is like CS is becoming more of a dedicated function, because when you have everyone doing everything, it means something isn't going to get done, right? Like they're going to end up focusing, if you have, let's say, an engagement person, they're either going to focus on the delivery, or they're going to focus on selling new business, or they're going to focus on the customer, right? And one of them is always going to take center stage for them. Giving a dedicated customer success org means that you've got someone focused on outcomes and customer, And then delivery can focus on delivery and sales can focus on sales. So it allows everyone to kind of specialize and focus in on their areas.
Perfect. Perfect. I mean, this just proves that customer success is just, as we discussed earlier, is much more than just handling escalations. It's more of an engagement. It's more of a discussion or a conversation with clients, and to achieve their goals. Which brings us to the next point. With customer success being defined here, what is the key role of customer success in a PSO? So I'll share with you another, I guess, two perspectives here. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to see that there are two different organizations, and in some cases, these two are combined. You have a SaaS company that sells and offers software as an annual recurring revenue, and then you have professional services organizations which deliver services in the form of projects or managed packages or whatnot. From my perspective, I've had the pleasure of working for a printing manufacturing company along with a system integrator, and there was also this need to sell software, hardware, and professional services. But there was also a challenge with identifying what customer success is within those organizations. As you said, everyone thinks that they can do it. Everyone wants to help the customer, but at the end of the day, everyone fails because there was no responsibility or key responsible department with pre-established practices. I guess my question to you, Naeem, in these kind of situations, how do you see customer success aligns with a professional services organization's goals and delivery goals?
No, I think regardless of whether you're looking at it from a SaaS point of view or a PSO point of view, ultimately end goal is going to be the same. What are we trying to do? We're trying to derive value for customers and make sure they get the best value from either the product or the service they're getting. We're trying to make sure that we have happy customers, and we're ultimately trying to drive repeat business. Now, I think you mentioned it quite well there. Like, one of the big things PS organizations are doing is pivoting to this managed services model, right? So, you initially come in, you do the implementation. A lot of these products are complex. They require time to kind of do the knowledge transfer, to build up your own team, to do that. And so we're getting into this model of where you provide managed services after the implementation, right? And then looking at managed services, it's the same as kind of the SaaS model. Ultimately, we look at renewals, we look at customer happiness, we look at customer value. So it turns this kind of PSL organization into having similar kind of goals as a SaaS organization, when we start looking at things like renewals and continued service. Ultimately, those organizations will also drive potential future revenue, right? Like a good CS organization should be talking to their customer and trying to understand what's important to them, what is in their roadmap, where are they going, and all of those things should then feed into, okay, well, how do we help you, right? Like, how can we support your journey throughout your life cycle, and how can we provide the best value to you?
So it sounds to me like from your perspective, the managed services, although it's a professional services offering, you're actually treating it as a product with the recurring revenue, similar to a SaaS-based company that offers a software.
Yeah,
is that the analogy that you're making here?
Yeah, I think you've got it spot on. That's exactly the kind of point. The managed services is just another products that we're, in the tool set of PSOs.
Understood. And what about you, Kate? I mean, given the fact that you work for Certinia, a SaaS company, but also has a professional services organization in it, what's your perspective on the CS role within Certinia and how you're using it today?
Yeah, great question. Like many of our customers out there and the industry in general, they're really looking to how they can better monetize customer success. So for professional services, those are typically, they deliver projects, and this may be an implementation project, driving adoption for a new customer, or it could be projects driving improvements to business processes with maybe a mature customer later in their life cycle. But all of these projects are typically intense and time-bound. So customer success efforts, on the other hand, are really focused on continuous value realization. So these efforts can be multi-year and focused on delivering value that underpins net revenue retention and really provides a platform for upsell and renewal really throughout the entire journey. And that could be using managed services as the product. So for example, services credits for health checks, adoption, or training are good examples. And this is where CS for services could come in. You all have mentioned that Diabsolut is really trailblazing on this. Certinia, along with many of our services industry customers, are really looking to do the same, and we see Diabsolut as being able to help all of us get there.
Perfect. And so to that point, this combination of products and services, and then from the lens of customer success, Naeem, I mean, you've mentioned earlier that you've recently got into customer success. As a matter of fact, you're leading now the customer success department within Diabsolut, and your background came from a position of VP of professional services. Can you talk to us about some of the the transition that you went through from PS to CS? I want to understand a little bit how that transition helped you and the organization in establishing this new department within Diabsolut using customer success as a framework. Naeem?
I'll kind of prepare this with a little example of what I'm actually doing with one of our customers right now. So, originally being in the PS organization, my primary focus used to be around delivery quality, around scope, timelines, and that really meant the conversation was a little bit kind of project focused and how we going to be successful in delivering the account, and keeping customers kind of happy with our delivery. What we didn't spend enough time doing, or we don't spend enough time doing, was having conversations with customers and getting their feedback, right? And doing it in a way that kind of is, look, we're not there to judge and defend. We're just there to listen and understand what your thoughts are. And I've always kind of said in every conversation I have, like, it's a two-way street, right? Like, I want to hear your feedback. I also want to share with you the feedback that I'm hearing from our own team, right? A good customer success team should not be afraid to kind of provide feedback in both directions. Like, hey, here's how we as an SI need to improve. Hey, customer, these are some of the challenges that we feel are contributing to the challenges we're facing, right? Here's things that you need to kind of improve. And interesting, one of our customers actually asked our CS group to kind of step in when they were having some internal conflicts between the development team versus the operations team on how they should approach problems. And they said, look, we want you to come in, talk to everyone, listen, and provide us some feedback, on where the challenges are, what kind of steps we should be taking, right? And it gives that customer the opportunity to listen, which is a little bit different from where PS is focusing on kind of delivery. The other part of it also gives, with PS, it was very kind of, how do we do the next thing, right? But it's looking at the short term. Within CS, that conversation's changed to, tell me what your roadmap is for the next 3 to 5 years, right? Let me tell you what we're doing, and you tell us, are we on the right path for you, right? Are we going to be developing services and developing products that are going to be important to you in the future, right? Because ultimately, that's another part of kind of a PS organizations. We need to move with the times. We need to provide services our customers are going to need. And so we should be asking our customers, what kind of stuff do they want us to focus on?
So these are all good points. And it seems to me that, when it comes to customer success, it's not just about renewals, whether in a SaaS company is a renewal of a software, or a services company, a renewal of a managed services. It's much more than that. Also sounds to me that customer success is more of a revenue generating kind of department rather than a cost center. And I guess, and I want to hear your thoughts. That's where we're going to move on to talk about building customer success framework. I guess my question to both of you is, when it comes to thinking about CS as a revenue generating center, Does that mean that it would help, CS would help sales, professional services teams, and so on to generate more revenue by upselling and cross-selling services, products, engagements? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I can go first on this. One of the things that I mentioned that has been a more focus recently is the silos. And, defining a customer success framework that really breaks down those departmental silos and follows the customer journey from opportunity to renewal is really key to not only align all of the teams, sales, delivery, success, service support, but also, to be able to set the teams up to be able to cross-sell and upsell. One of the things that we see is that different departments have sort of different views of the customer. So that means that there may be no understanding of what success means and how it's going to be measured as that customer moves through their life cycle. So one of the things that we talk about in that framework is really having that centralized capture of the data. So, traditional sales solutions, CRM solutions, they're capturing it in their CRM system. Professional services might even be in an Excel spreadsheet. Success might be a lot of tribal knowledge, support in their ticketing system. So it's important to really bring those all together so that customers, don't end up feeling your organizational structure. And then, having the right people coming in when there's transitions and being able to look at that centralized data and information really aligns all of those teams together. So, the what you see is a more customer-centric approach to customer success. And that also sets it up so that as you're capturing that information all along the journey, you're also being able to, leverage AI technologies and other technologies to surface, cross-sell and upsell opportunities throughout the entire journey. And we're seeing more and more that, efficiency is important, but revenue generation and growth is really what everybody is looking for.
So this is a great point. I want to share with you and the audience another TSIA survey where they asked the audience about who handles customer success when you do not have a customer success department. And if we go and see the next slide, you'll see that 55% of the respondent mentioned that it's sales that's responsible for customer success. And obviously, you'll see here that there are other departments taking part of that engagement, some of which is customer support, escalations and whatnot, PS and so on. But the majority is in sales, and the majority of that data is running in a CRM system. I guess my question to you, Naeem, looking at this statistic and based on what we heard from Kate, does that resonate with what's happening with the clients that you meet with, including us as well?
It's a great question, Sam. And this is actually something we're working on right now, is defining kind of the engagement model, how we engage with customers. So right now, we have kind of like two types of customers. We have, customers where we have a dedicated CSM attached to the account, who's going to be there from the end of the sales cycle onwards. They're responsible and they're the account owner. They own every interaction with the account. They own the account health and satisfaction. But then in situations where we don't have a customer success, it's difficult to define, right? Because sales want to focus on selling, right? They want to sell more into the business. Professional services want to focus on delivery and stuff. So we're actually working through this right now and trying to kind of figure out the best definition. And what we've kind of settled on is that CS role is going to be split between those two kind of functions, between sales and professional services. So not necessarily one person owning everything, but there are certain aspects. We talk about managed service renewals as a good example, right? So we decided renewals is going to be a sales function, right? So when there isn't a CSM attached, the renewal process is going to be handled by sales to help drive that through. Versus something like doing like CSATs and customer satisfaction, we decided that's going to be a professional services function, that they're going to drive doing CSAT and getting feedback and giving that information and acting upon that to kind of make improvements. So yeah, I think we're kind of balanced between the two right now. Still trying to figure out some of the finer details on it.
So, Kate, from your perspective, what sort of best practices when it comes to customer success in general, and how that division between sales and customer success is handled based on what you've seen and based on your experience as well?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, more and more companies are finding that customer success as an organization or department, really, it's a requirement versus a nice to have. And I think it shows right here why that is, because sales ends up doing customer success, and they're really much more focused on sales. And so, some of the best practices that we've created in our product and that we're doing within our company and we're seeing our customers do with our product is really moving from that organization-centric focus, with each department almost being like their own small company with that siloed data, siloed resources, siloed goals for the customer for their specific portion of the journey, to having that customer really become the center of everything, and everybody really, all of those organizations really being orchestrated around that customer. And that really, ensures that the customer and departments get connected by that life cycle journey of the customers, the data shared across that journey. You get seamless handoffs for all of those life cycle changes. And the focus is not about, the internal customer from opportunity to renewal, but it actually becomes, about the customer journey, where the customer is finding out about the product because they have a pain point, they have a business challenge that they're looking to solve with your product. So really, it's looking through the lens of the customer and their journey of, purchasing the product, adopting the product, implementing and adopting the product, getting the most value out of that solution, and really demonstrating that value to the customer throughout their journey in increments. That's something that is a best practice that we have in our product as well, is to really start to have that prescriptive approach with professional services and customer success and all of your customer facing organizations, where you're demonstrating value to the customer in their language based on what you captured during that opportunity stage. So we're seeing that is really paying dividends for customer success, and we're seeing a lot of renewal rates going up, and customer CSAT going up, and NPS scores going up. So there's a lot of metrics that we're seeing based on following those best practices.
So speaking of metrics, obviously metrics and KPIs are important in any business and any department, but specifically for CS, because you need to capture really the sentiment of your customer and how they want to, whether they want to renew their contract with you, services or software wise, or something else. But at the end of the day, I think, from a metrics perspective, what are the tools that allow you to capture that data and manage it in such a way that allows you to build that framework? Because I don't know about you, but from my perspective, I think you need three things in any department. You need the people who are skilled and experienced. You need the processes in place, or the best practices, and then at the end of the day, you need the tools to support the resources and the best practices. So I guess Kate, how about you start first, and then we switch to Naeem, get his opinion.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, net revenue retention or net dollar retention is the ultimate metric, and that's really showing that your customers are staying with you, they are renewing, and of course, you want to know that they're renewing because they are happy with their product as well and getting value out of it. So CSAT and NPS are also key metrics to measure that, but not just having those metrics, but being able to really demonstrate that internally to your entire business and organization, and show the contribution that customer success is making to the business has also become a really key point for what we've seen with our customers. They want to demonstrate to the business that they have that they're providing value. But the other thing is that those metrics are all about the internal business. But one of the things that I keep talking about is the value that the customer is looking to achieve from the solution. So having those value KPIs, the value objective KPIs captured for the customer and tracked and continuously reviewed with the customer in throughout the implementation, throughout adoption, and beyond, renewal becomes less of a heavy lift for companies because they've been continuously showing the value that they've been providing to the customer. What I've also seen is that by having that continuous value checkpoints, if something changes in your customer's business, you're able to capture that and make that change, and be able to address that, and not have the whole team continuing down the former value objective. So that's also a really good point that we've seen where things change in the business, and by having that prescriptive approach, you're able to really make sure that everybody's aligned around what success looks like for the customer, what those outcomes are, how it's going to be measured. And that then really demonstrates, then those metrics of net revenue retention, CSAT and NPS are really, you're going to see those go up as well. Naeem?
Naeem?
Yeah, I think you touched on some great points there, Kate, especially the idea of kind of being able to capture those metrics and checking in on them constantly. This is actually one of my favorite things I've kind of started using right now, is like a customer scorecard. So we, as part of our CS Cloud implementation, we kind of put a set of automated metrics so that we can monitor our customers. And so the ability to kind of, constantly be checking on the customer's health, being able to kind of see, how different actions on the project, on different engagements are impacting the customer health, so that you can be kind of proactive in that approach, right? So having those KPIs and being like, hey, I can see that the trend for this customer is going down. Let's be proactive and have a conversation and support that customer, versus kind of, we only get made aware of it when things have gone wrong, when, because we're not having enough kind of touch points and enough information. It's like, oh, the customer's already in a point of, they're yellow and red, or there's a problem. I think being proactive and monitoring and managing those KPIs really helps. I've also learned, like, you want to automate everything as much as possible, right? So make it so that as customer fills out a CSAT survey, that informs you, the system tells you like, hey, okay, they filled it in. Here's some positives they put in. Here's some negatives they put in. Great. Use that information and act upon it. Right. So those are all kind of like, I always like to have KPIs driven around like metrics, financials, CSATs, NPS. Those are all kind of valuable things that feed into a good way of managing and seeing your customers' health.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. One of our customers, their NPS score went up after using our product, Customer Success Cloud, for for some time. And one of the things that, is interesting is that they did a NPS scoring, and they had an outlier. And because of Customer Success Cloud and having that process triggered automatically, they were able to immediately understand which customer was that outlier, what their challenges were, to then address them and turn that customer into a promoter. So it's not just, having those scores go up, but it's also having those processes that you mentioned in place to address that for your customers.
These are great points. Question to you, Naeem. In terms of best practices for a professional services organization, if you could provide at least top 3 tips on what a PSO should go through or should put together or follow in terms of a best practice.
Sure. I think the number one is spend the time to listen to your customers, right? Like that's the biggest single kind of advice I can give is spend the time to sit down with them and have a very, I'm just going to listen to you and understand your point of view, right? Don't try to defend a point of view. Don't try to kind of, correct the customer. I think it's important that we need to spend time to listen to them. 2, feedback to the customer, right? If the customer says, hey, I wasn't happy with the quality of the documentation you were delivering to us because I felt these were the problems, right? And you take that and you drive an internal initiative, tell your customer, hey, we listened to what you said, and this is what we're doing in our organization to improve upon those kind of aspects, right? Like the customers are going to be the best place to get that kind of advice. But every customer wants to know, like, hey, okay, these guys listened to me and they took that and they're sharing with me what kind of things they're doing to improve, right? So this is an organization that's invested, in my opinion, right? Lastly, data. Like a good PSO organization, or good any organization, capture the data, centralize it, put it in a system so that you can kind of see it. If I go back 10 years, my customer notes used to be a ton of emails, right? I have emails and every customer, I had a conversation with this customer and I put it in my OneNote and I was trying to think, okay, well, this is a customer sentiment. Okay, this is the things I need to do. I now replace that with, I put it into our CRM so that I can see a history of, okay, these are the interactions I've had and stuff. So develop a strategy to capture that information so that you can kind of see over time, and other people as well. Like if you've got multiple people involved in an account, there's multiple points of views, capture those so that they're all shared so that we can act on well.
Perfect. And same question to Kate, but from the perspective of a SaaS company that has a PSO or a professional service organization within it, what are the top 3 tips in terms of best practices or things to follow in order to be successful?
Yeah, I would say, having that value journey, that framework defined. One of the things that we hear all the time, and I experience this as well, being at my previous companies and roles in consulting as well as customer success, is that those transitions for the customer are really very important. And, from their perspective, they don't see that they're dealing with 2 different departments. They see that they are just moving from, let's say, the purchase of the product, and now they're moving into implementation. But that transition can feel really challenging, and where they're having to repeat themselves over and over again. You also may have different customer constituents. So during the sales process, you might have your executive sponsor who's talking about, the challenges that the customers, their business is facing. They're talking about, what value they're looking for. And if you don't capture that and don't then have that transition to the next group, which is likely to be a totally different customer constituent, meaning it's going to be the project teams, both on the vendor and the customer side, they're going to, they may be coming into this not knowing anything about why this product was purchased, what value is looking to be achieved out of it. So having that centralized capture of the value objectives, the KPIs, the challenges, and then, continuing to build that out as more of those people are different departments are talking to the customer, having interactions with the customer, really building out that entire 360-degree view of the customer is key. So having the transitions defined, having that framework, the value framework, making sure that you've got that customer-centric approach where everybody's looking at the customer from the same perspective. Data is key as well. That needs to be shared. You need to have that data-driven intelligence for service and success resources when they're added, to have that capture of that data. And then one of the other things that we're also seeing, so I would say the third thing is really having resource management, making sure that you're assigning resources to those tasks based on their skills, their availability, their attributes. So that could be like, what geo they're in, the languages they speak, the industry knowledge, or how well they performed in a similar role, or even, their knowledge of a particular customer. Having resource management, that's really the main thing that's going to help you orchestrate the team sport and the entire journey. So I would say that those are really the key best practices.
Perfect. And with that, we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. Let me go through them, and here's a good question. So I'll ask this question, Kate, you can respond to it first, and then we can switch to Naeem. So the question states, are there specific metrics or KPIs that PSOs specifically prioritize differently than SaaS companies? For example, would PSOs focus on tracking churn rates or others? Kate?
Yeah, well, as we talked about, the managed services are really the product. And so, being able to track some of those same metrics that we talked about earlier, to be able to make sure that the managed services as your product are being delivered, your customer is getting value from those managed services the same way that they would from a SaaS product, tracking that value, and really making sure that you close the loop with that customer to say, this is what we captured as the value that you were looking for out of these managed services, and then here's what we have given you out of that. So some of the things that we're seeing is, there could be like services credits that you buy, maybe for adoption or for training, and then being able to have a success plan around those services credits. And in some businesses, the TCSM can be monetized to deliver those the adoption and some of the training and health score, any sort of health score drops, or anything from a low adoption or low engagement. So being able to to be able to show the value, have that success plan, have those value objectives, and be able to close the loop on that. That's just as important in SaaS as it is in a professional services organization.
Okay, perfect. And what about you, Naeem, from your perspective? What sort of metrics, just to answer that question?
Sure. I think one metric I think every organization, SaaS or PSO, looks at is NPS, right? How likely is that customer to recommend you to other organizations, right? And that's going to be true of every customer that you kind of deal with. But from a PSO focused one of the things we look at is account profitability, right? Like how much time are we investing into this account versus how much revenue they're generating, right? And this kind of sort of works in two ways. One is, are we kind of delivering good value to them? Two, when things go wrong, obviously there's always an investment to make into an account, right? If you suddenly notice, hey, we're making a ton of investment into the account because we're having to fix problems, well, that says to me that there's something in the account that needs attention. So that's just another indicator that kind of gives us an idea of what is the relationship in the account and how is it going.
Perfect. Thank you both. Looking at another question here from the audience. Question actually for Naeem. On a personal level, what do you see the key differences between being a VP of CS and professional services organization versus a SaaS company?
Sure. I like to say stress. So I think there's a little bit less stress being a VP of PS versus being a VP of CS, at least for me. But otherwise, I think the model is slightly different. Like obviously SaaS models very much focused on license renewals and continuous customer engagement, adoption. Professional services organizations focused more on kind of delivery, quality, adding value to kind of the customer and stuff. Different goals, but within CS, ultimately, because you always kind of come back to the same thing, we're trying to make our customer happy. I don't think there's a huge amount of differences between like running a CS organization in a PSO versus a SaaS company. It's just maybe a few different kind of metrics to play with.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll pick one last question here before we wrap it up. And the question, this is actually more for Kate. Question is, how does your how does your internal professional services business unit interact with your customer success department? And are there any overlaps and how did you overcome them? And I guess this is from the perspective of Certinia, Kate.
Yeah, that's the great question. I mentioned earlier about those transition and handoffs. Really, the place that we started was that sales to service success transition and having the customer success manager be brought into the customer engagement process earlier. Traditionally, customer success hasn't come into the process until post sale or post go live, and by then it can be too late. And so one of the things that we've really tried to do is to have the sales, service, and success teams really aligned all the way up at the sales to service success handoff when the deal closes. And that really makes it so that the customer success leader is not starting on their back foot, because they are able to see what the customer is looking for from a value perspective. They are part of that sales to service success transition. The success plan gets created automatically based on the information that was captured during the opportunity stage. More data is added to that. The CSM is able to have that success plan reviewed during the kickoff for the implementation. I mentioned those value checkpoints throughout the implementation, where you're able to check in with the customer, start demonstrating value. Some of our customers and even Certinia, we're looking to demonstrate incremental value, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, so that, by the time the customer goes live, they've already seen some of that value shown to them. So that's some of the things that it's not necessarily really overlaps, but it's how did we make our departments really be orchestrated in a very meaningful way for the customer and around the customer.
Perfect. Before we wrap it up, I believe we had a poll that we we want to share with the audience. I don't know, Erica, if that's ready or not. Erica, can we start the poll or? Oh, okay, I guess we're having some technical difficulty with the poll. Let's move on with the final thoughts from the audience. Let's start with Naeem first.
Okay, thanks. Look, I think this is still a relatively new space with customer success in PSO. I think, we're in a kind of situation where we're learning that experience matters. This is every day in our life. Like, we are much more focused on the experience that we have with every service we use, right? Whether it's a piece of software that we're using, whether it's a service provider, having a good experience means you're likely to use that service again, right? And I'll use the example of Uber. There's a quality of experience you get from Uber. If you have a problem, how you reach out to them, right? And it drives brand loyalty. Customer success is the same when you start looking at like professional services organizations. If you make the customer experience number one and you give them a good customer experience and you support them through the challenging times and you're proactive, you're going to develop brand loyalty. You're going to develop customers who like working with you because they can trust you, right? And they know that, hey, look, if I raise a problem to Diabsolut, Diabsolut's going to do something about it and they're going to react to it. And hey, I didn't even realize I was having a problem, but Diabsolut was keeping an eye on me and told me, hey, I've got a problem, right? Those kind of interactions and being customer focused really embeds like a solid relationship in the mind of those customers. And then once you've got that relationship, it's just about spending the time and working with your customers to figure out what's important to them, what do they need from you, and how do you best get it to them.
Perfect. And Kate?
Yeah, great. Really, companies operating on a recurring revenue model or on a services, managed services model, they're going to need professional services and customer success teams working together in order to meet their customers where they are, remain aligned on the desired outcomes and deliver value by way of those desired outcomes really throughout the entire life cycle of the customer. Really either of these models sets the expectation of winning those customers' hearts at every touch point in the customer journey, and then continuing to increase the amount of value extracted over time. Professional services and customer success really have to work as a unified team to continuously deliver that customer value. Have that integrated approach really ensures that customers receive consistent and valuable service throughout their entire engagement. And really being able to turn transactional services delivery into ongoing value realization.
Excellent. And from my perspective, I do believe that customer success is I know it's not a new concept, but it's new for a professional services organization. It's all about trial and error and being able to adopt best practices to take that concept that existed and was created in a SaaS environment and taking it in a professional services organization. It's going to take some effort, but at the end of the day, you as a PSO, you will reap the benefit later on. So with that, I'd like to thank both Naeem and Kate for their time today. Really appreciate the discussion. And obviously for the audience, if you have any further questions, please let us know. And with that, I'll pass it to Erica.
Thank you, everyone. My apologies for some of the technical difficulties today. It seems that whenever it's a live webinar, this is when you get caught.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. As always, we will be sharing out the link to the recording. So as Naeem and Issam and Kate, biggest thank you to all three of you moderating, your insights, your expertise, your perspective, very much appreciated. Thank you for your time. and have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.